Greetings, everyone. Here are the latest important developments and analyses today. Shocking news: a mysterious force has torn through Iranian airspace, officially changing the geopolitical chessboard of the Middle East. 3 consecutive attacks have struck directly at Iran's strategic islands, not from the US or Israel, but from a much more formidable neighboring power lurking behind the scenes. That horrifying truth is emerging. Urgent warning: Turkey has intervened, completely neutralizing Iran's most dangerous blackmail weapon. Numerous infamous suicide drone swarms from Tehran are now at risk of being incinerated into ashes in just a few milliseconds by the Iron Dome. What top-secret arms race is underway that is helping countries from Saudi Arabia to Kuwait turn Iran's missile strikes into worthless scrap? A new super economic corridor has emerged, shattering the Strait of Hormuz blackmail card. Officially defeated, Tehran's arrogant move to blockade the flow of oil has been ruthlessly crushed by a $24 billion super economic corridor. The emergence of this perfect lifeline route is pushing Iran's economy to the brink of collapse and permanently stripping them of their power. How did this happen? Here are the details and an in-depth analysis. Turkey has completely dominated, and the Hormuz Strait blackmail card has officially failed. Ladies and gentlemen, the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East is experiencing a silent but extremely fierce upheaval. It is shifting the entire balance of power, which was already very fragile. In the strategic waters of Hormuz, analysts have long believed that the instability of the Tehran government could only come from American missile barrages or airstrikes from Israel. But no, a cruel and ironic truth is unfolding right before our eyes. What is shaking the very foundation of Iran's position right now is actually its neighbor, with whom it shares more than 530 kilometers of border: Turkey. After a long period of silence during regional crises, the Ankara government has suddenly taken extraordinary steps, directly and fundamentally changing the military balance in the region. Immediately after sending drone experts, those who made history on the battlefield in Ukraine, to the region, Ankara decisively established a massive drone network and air defense system for the countries in the area. By transferring the most advanced military equipment to the Arab kingdoms and simultaneously reviving a historic trade route to completely bypass the Strait of Hormuz, Turkey is gradually taking away Iran's biggest tool of blackmail. This historic decision will create an extremely effective and nearly impenetrable defensive shield throughout the region, ready to thwart any possible attacks from Iran. This shift in power is no longer just a theory on paper in diplomatic circles, but has turned into real combat actions, bloody and reeking of gunpowder. In that geopolitical whirlwind, the United Arab Emirates has stepped onto the stage as the most decisive and proactive actor in the Gulf region. Their situation is completely different from the usual defensive mindset of their neighbors, as they decided to pursue a bold, all-out offensive strategy to maximize their long-range deterrence capabilities instead of just sitting back and defending. In May 2026 at the Sahara Defense Exhibition, a formidable military and technological alliance was formed. 2 independent strategic agreements were announced between the defense giant Ejdug of the United Arab Emirates and the Turkish aerospace company Baykar, officially signed on May 8, 2026. This agreement goes far beyond a simple arms purchase contract, as the core goal of the United Arab Emirates at the negotiating table was to transform their existing fleet of armed drones into truly formidable combat machines. Remarkably, even during the conflict, they conducted field tests of these Turkish weapons in real operations against Iran. For the first time in the history of the conflict, the giant Akinci drones in the UAE's arsenal took off, crossed the red line, and launched 3 consecutive devastating airstrikes deep into the heart of Iran's command center. This move is a clear demonstration that Turkey is no longer just standing by to protect the Gulf, but is elevating the offensive capabilities of the entire Arabian Peninsula to an unprecedented level. So what strategic advantages will those holding this edge gain over Iran thanks to military resources from Turkey? And what will the new trade route bypassing the Strait of Hormuz mean for the entire region? First, let's take a deeper look at the weapon systems now being deployed to the region. These are the very factors that will most harshly and effectively restrain Iran. The most impressive stop in these historic steps, fundamentally changing the military infrastructure of the region, is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. For many years, the Riyadh government has been forced into an unreasonable war of attrition compelled to burn billions of dollars to operate expensive Western defense systems like Patriot or THAAD, in order to counter the cheap yet devastating suicide drone swarms from Iran. While a single interceptor missile costs millions of dollars, thousands of Iranian suicide drones continuously drain Saudi Arabia's defense budget and overload Saudi defense systems, especially in the eastern region, where massive energy industrial centers like Dammam and the Jazdan Nusa oil refinery are located, the largest oil reservoirs on the planet. Located just 300 to 500 kilometers from the Iranian border, these are always extremely sensitive and vulnerable targets. Recalling the dark scenario that Iranian raids once caused for the national economy, the Riyadh government made a firm decision, shifting focus, directing all of Turkey's expectations and military capabilities. Saudi Arabia has officially signed a historic contract to acquire a national counter-drone air defense system produced by the Aselsan Corporation. This is a strong agreement. Jay deals a harsh blow to the Iranian government because the Quad system is equipped with AI-integrated radar and automatic cannons that use smart, airburst programmable ammunition. A TM Atom 25mm can neutralize targets in just a few milliseconds. The low-flying, stealthy kamikaze drones from Iran will now be crushed to dust in the blink of an eye by dense clouds of shrapnel fired from the Quad cannon and tear the target apart right in midair. But that's not all. Ziad was not satisfied. With a purely kinetic shield, they have pushed technology to a science fiction level by moving to a new generation of anti-drone laser weapon systems, just unveiled to the world at the SEAR exhibition in 2026. The directed energy weapon systems named Kokbak, ISDA, Goka, and MiG-4 can be easily integrated onto small military trucks. They are rewriting the entire air defense doctrine in the Gulf region by reducing the cost per shot to almost zero, by completely incinerating cheap drones capable of blinding Patriot missile batteries using high-energy beams. Ziad can preserve his multi-million-dollar missiles for much greater threats from ballistic missiles. Now, with Turkey's advanced weaponry, as these weapons pour into Gulf states, the battlefield landscape is changing profoundly. The endless waves of drone and ballistic missile attacks from Iran, which Iran has turned into a tool of geopolitical blackmail since the outbreak of war, will completely lose their destructive power and inherent threat. Turkish military systems are being deployed to create a multi-layered, tight-knit defensive shield. At the same time, they provide the capability to counterattack against Iran in the region. In other words, even if the threat of attacks from Iran continues with full force, the Gulf countries that possess Turkish defense systems in their arsenals are gradually stepping onto the stage with a completely proactive stance. This shifts the strategic balance to a new, turbulent chapter and completely isolates the previous dominant position of Iran. On April 1st, 2026, it was a top-secret operation launched from the Gulf region, directly targeting Iranian territory. It caused heavy losses and shocked the entire international observer community. According to Tehran government allegations, the United Arab Emirates, for the first time in history, they used Akinci unmanned combat aircraft purchased from Turkey to launch a direct raid deep inside Iranian territory. This incident only came to light when Iran's official complaint letter was sent to the United Nations Security Council, exposing a scenario of relentless attacks consisting of 3 consecutive waves of destruction. It began with a single Akinci suddenly appearing and mercilessly bombing strategic military targets on Qesem Island in the Persian Gulf. Shortly after, while the smoke and fire had yet to subside, a second wave of 2 more Akinci aircraft continued the assault, turning the island into a devastated battlefield. It didn't stop there. By midday, another pair of Akinci unexpectedly shifted their military direction, unleashing fierce barrages on key facilities on Levan Island. In response to accusations of aggression and Tehran's outrage before the international community, the United Arab Emirates chose to remain silent, neither admitting nor denying the incident. They only briefly stated that their nation has the full right to legitimate self-defense. This fierce clash is the clearest answer to why, at the Sahara Defense Exhibition held in May 2026, the United Arab Emirates hurriedly signed a vital weapons integration agreement. According to the approved terms, Turkish technology corporation Baykar would be responsible for testing and directly integrating high-precision smart bombs called Encirclement, a proud product of the Ezbrook Defense Group from the UAE, onto Akinci drone squadrons. The combination of Turkish technological expertise and Gulf firepower will elevate the strength, bombing range, and destructive capability of the Akinci fleet to an entirely unprecedented level. Now, thanks to the Antarex smart bombs, the unmanned combat aircraft of the United Arab Emirates can easily destroy command centers in the most sensitive industrial facilities of Iran from hundreds of kilometers away, without having to put themselves within the dangerous range of the enemy's air defense networks. After that, the second strategic step opened up a framework for commercial cooperation and global product marketing, turning Turkey and the United Arab Emirates into two companions, two partners standing side by side in the international arms market. While Saudi Arabia has been striving to bring in solid shields, the United Arab Emirates is using Turkish weapons to sharpen their attacking swords, turning psychological and military fear of Iran into a deadlier threat than ever. Another important power in the Gulf region, Kuwait, also cannot stand outside the arms race, quickly securing its strategic position to build a fortress against Iran. The military situation and threats facing Kuwait are truly urgent and more life and death than any neighboring country in the region. Due to its geographical characteristics, this country lies right in front of the enemy's gun barrel, being only 100 to 200 kilometers from Iran's coast. This brutally short distance means that Iran's Shahed 136 suicide drones or cruise missiles only need a few minutes of flight to devastate their capital. Facing this harsh reality, Kuwait's Ministry of Defense decided to make a historic move, signing a direct government-to-government procurement protocol with Turkish defense industry giants, including Aselsan and Aselsan, Havelsan, Baykar, Otakar, and the Yonkash shipyard of Onik. The ultimate goal of the Kuwaiti royal family is nothing other than to possess the Akinci super drones and the legendary Hisar air defense system from the Roketsan group. The Hisar A system will serve as the frontline defenders in Kuwait's skies, prepared to intercept low-flying Iranian drone swarm within a 15-kilometer range. Right behind, the Hisar system will establish a massive defense network with a radius from 25 to 60 kilometers, covering all the nation's core targets. Thanks to this, the strategic Ali al-Salam Air Base, along with the country's vital oil refineries, will be placed under absolute protection. The tactic of using overwhelming numbers of drones to dominate the skies over Iran will now be broken by up to 90% against Turkey's multi-layered steel dome. Not only that, the Akinci squadrons owned by Kuwait will not just perform simple air defense missions, but like the lesson from the United Arab Emirates, they are ready to launch a swift counterattack as soon as there are signs of intrusion. After Kuwait's historic move, the focus of observers continues to shift to Qatar, an equally important link in the new security circle. Located right on the edge of the strategic Strait of Hormuz and home to one of the largest U.S. military forces in the Middle East, Qatar is only about 150 kilometers by sea from Iran. This exposed geographical position makes Doha a very lucrative and vulnerable target for stealth attacks by low-altitude cruise missiles and unmanned aerial vehicles launched from the sea. Realizing that Western defensive weapon systems could not cover this deadly gap, the Doha government followed in the footsteps of Saudi Arabia. They officially signed a contract to acquire national air defense systems manufactured by AISO. The special thing about these systems is they are mounted on highly mobile armored vehicle chassis such as ESTA, Estank, or Tacha, turning them into mobile predator machines, constantly patrolling along the desert regions and the remote coastline of Qatar. This mobile national defense force will form a solid steel firewall around the airbase, Al Udeid Air Base, and other key areas of Doha. In this way, Qatar not only protects its own sovereignty and security, but also indirectly safeguards the strategic military base of the United States from blackmail tactics using cheap drones from across the strait. However, if we have to look for a complex and tricky link, and the most decisive factor in the entire encirclement strategy against the influence of Iran in the region is definitely Iraq, which shares a border with Iran, stretching more than 1,500 kilometers, where every kilometer of land is filled with deadly security loopholes. Iraq is the country that had to pay the highest price in blood and tears during the war. In 2026, the whole world was powerless, witnessing militia forces loyal to Tehran freely operating. Dense swarms of drones filled the sky over Baghdad, turning this country into an unregulated shooting range. However, to end that humiliating nightmare and regain supreme control over their nation's airspace, the Baghdad government took an extraordinary step that no analyst could have predicted. Using the hard-learned lessons from recent drone attacks in the last war as a direct reason, Iraq finalized a deal to purchase exactly 20 air defense systems, advanced ones from Turkey. This contract, with its financial details, is finally being completed. Baghdad is decisively taking back its destiny from the manipulative hands of Tehran, restoring the sovereignty of its skies to their rightful place under the independent control of the Royal Army. For Iraq, the pivotal role that weapons systems in Turkey's defensive shield play in this game will deliver a complete shock to the leadership of Iran. At the core are armored anti-aircraft vehicle complexes. These 20 massive anti-drone systems will establish a tightly secured defensive belt, protecting the vital oil fields of Iraq at Kirkuk and Basra, international diplomatic delegations, and even the strategic airport at Bil. Every inch of land, every stretch of sky, once so vulnerable to the crude but deadly drone swarms launched by Iran-backed militia groups. Now, these flying entities will be blown to pieces in just a few seconds as soon as they enter the sweep zone of the integrated AI radar systems. A truth that may seem absurd, but is happening right before our eyes. Gulf countries and Middle Eastern powers are simultaneously turning away from their traditional partners to seek out Turkish weapons, an essential lifeline against threats from Iran. The reason behind this unanimous choice is extremely practical and clear. Ankar's equipment does not come with any political strings attached. The delivery speed is astonishingly fast, and more importantly, they have been battle-tested and proven to be devastatingly effective, often on the world's most intense battlefields. To counter the blackmail tactics by closing the Strait of Hormuz, Turkey and the Gulf kingdoms have created a perfect alternative route. On such a scale, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of Iran's biggest strategic card suddenly lost its value. It turned into nothing more than a pile of scrap. Within the framework of the Middle Corridor strategy, Ankara is breathing new life into massive bypass routes, directly connecting the Gulf region through the territory of Iraq to reach Europe at an extraordinary speed. The Iraq Development Road Project, with a total value of up to $24 billion, is a mega project integrating massive highways and railways. It originates from the port in the Basra region and stretches 1,200 kilometers all the way to the Turkish border. This mega project is possible due to the vast financial and logistical resources from Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. It's operating at an unprecedented pace. At this moment, it safely transports oil and cargo containers from the Gulf region through Turkey to the Mediterranean Sea, completely bypassing the Strait of Hormuz. Hormuz is now out of the game. Alongside that grand logistics corridor, there's also the oil pipeline project from Basra to Ceyhan Port, an urgent solution proposed by the chairman of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol. This proposal is also being accelerated to increase transport capacity to millions of barrels per day. Now, for Kuwait, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia, the nightmare of having to send commercial ships into the waters of the Strait of Hormuz or the Red Sea, as well as having to bow to missile threats from Iran, has completely ended. While Iran is engrossed in dreams of nuclear agreements and regional dominance, they suddenly woke up and realized that they had lost all their neighboring countries, falling into complete isolation while their economy was dragged down into the abyss of collapse. Turkey has risen as the architect of supreme power, becoming an undisputed force in the Middle East through rapid defense procurement deals, seamlessly combining military technology and civilian intelligence, with massive transport corridors and unique strategic moves. Will Iran, after the Hormuz Strait card was completely neutralized by Turkey's mega middle corridor projects, will it launch a final all-out suicide attack using proxy forces in utter desperation and panic? Or is this the reason why this country is collapsing from within?